Hello, everyone. Welcome to Your Money. I'm Christine Romans. Ali Velshi is on the CNN Express in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We'll catch up with him in just a bit. Ali's getting your reaction to President Obama's latest attempt to spur the country to pass health care reform. It's still early in his administration, but the president knows his legacy could hang in the balance.
I'm not the first president to take up this cause, but I am determined to be the last.
It is make or break time. Will the president get this done? Let's bring in our CNN senior political analyst, Gloria Borger, and Andrew Rubin. He's the host of SiriusXM's Dr. Radio. Gloria, will he get it done?
Well, I think in the end, the president is going to get something passed, and whatever he gets passed, he's going to call health care reform. And he's got a majority of Democrats. The question is, how many votes do they get from the Republicans? I think maybe one, maybe two in the Senate, probably not very many in the House. But he is going to get something done. Get something done,
but we don't know what it's going to look like quite yet.
We're not sure.
What do they want, Ali, in Pennsylvania? What are people telling you they'd like to see in health care reform? And how's the president playing there?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been on the road for about 3 weeks all told, and more than 3,000 miles. And what people are telling us is more in the middle of what you've been hearing either at town hall meetings or at rallies or you know, on the extremes. People understand that there's something that needs to be done. This is a real crisis. There are real concerns about how to pay for it, who pays for it, and how efficiently it will be run, what sort of access people will have to health care. Still a lot more questions than answers, and more people I ran into do not know exactly what they're fighting about just yet. So for all the money that's being spent and all those 6 lobbyists to one legislator that you mentioned earlier, the bottom line is most Americans are still a little unclear as to exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
And now, after this week, there's a new name in this debate, a name we hadn't heard, a lawmaker named Joe Wilson, who suddenly is front and center in what they are arguing about. I want you to listen to him.
There are also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This, too, is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
An awkward moment of indiscretion that really made a lot of people very angry at the lack of civility there, and he apologized. But the point here is that many people, Andrew Rubin, are very upset about the notion that you're going to have health care reform, and either you're not going to address immigration issues in it, or you're going to be giving subsidized health insurance to people who are in the country illegally. Where do we stand on this?
Well, let's be very clear. Healthcare reform is not immigration reform. But let's also be very clear. You know, it's hard to get an accurate count of how many illegal immigrants are in this country. If the number is 7 million, 8 million, that sounds like a reasonable place to start, and that's what the Census Bureau estimates. And the reality is 13% of that population, again by estimates, seek health care in the emergency room, a very expensive place to have it. There's one study that came out that said we're spending around $11 billion a year on treating illegal immigrants in their health care needs.
So if you're going to leave, so look, if you're going to leave these people out of health care reform, right, then you're not addressing those costs. You're not addressing the issue of the uninsured in this country. But it's political suicide, Gloria Borger, to go out there and say, let's try to figure out how everyone gets covered, no matter who is in this country. Right. The president's never going to do that.
Well, and the president has not done that. There, make no mistake, there are no federal subsidies for illegal immigrants to buy health insurance in any bill that we've seen. I think what we're fighting over is this question of verification. How do you verify someone gets brought into an emergency room? What do you do?
Well,
but there is no money. Your money is not going to go to subsidize health insurance of illegal immigrants.
That's right, and it already is federal law, and some people don't get this. It already is federal law that if someone is having their appendixes burst, they go to a hospital and taxpayers pay for that. I mean, that happens because that's the kind of country we live in. Another issue here is the Congressional Research Service put out this report saying that basically they said a prohibition on people not being able to get the subsidized health insurance is unenforceable. And I think that's something that the right has really jumped in on, Andrew Rubin, to say, look, this means that it's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know we absolutely don't know what's going to happen. And listen, I want to say this. We are already paying for these illegal immigrants to be in the emergency room. That comes out of the funds that are available for health care. So to not really find a way to treat them in a more cost-effective setting, I think is a think is a little silly. But it's
a whole debate that's not even been had because people are just so riled up about the politics of the whole thing. You know, Ali, one thing about this that I think is just fascinating is I think that lunch bucket Democrats and moderate Republicans, the reason they don't believe it when you say no, illegal immigrants are not going to be included in subsidized health care, government subsidized health care, is because illegal immigrants are precluded from participating in the labor market, and they do. So people look around and they say, yeah, you can make laws, but how are you going to enforce them? I think people just generally mistrust this whole thing, and it shows that you've got immigration reforms and health care reform that have collided together and really riled people up.
Yeah, and let's go further than that. We're a year away from the collapse of Lehman Brothers, exactly 1 year away as of Sunday night. The reality is people don't generally trust government. They're not trusting Wall Street. They're not trusting government to get things done. And unfortunately, these red meat issues are what are dividing people. You know, I was in the south side of Chicago where so many people feel that their access to medical care in hospitals is crowded by people who have no health insurance, who use the emergency rooms for their health care, that they were all in support of a government-sponsored option for health care, because they said if we can get all these people who use emergency rooms for their medical care to use other medical care, my emergency room will be available to me. My hospital will be available to me. So depending on where you come from in this country. Now, I should tell you, when I was at a Tea Party rally in Scranton at the end of the week, Pennsylvania, you know, it was the first time that the pro-health care reform people had been there in larger numbers, and it got very testy. In fact, you can probably see in some of the video that I've got, there's a pushing match that ensued. It got brought under control, but there was no real discussion, no substantive discussion about health care going on there. It was all of these red meat issues, immigration, communism, all that kind of stuff. We're still missing the meat and potatoes of this discussion. I'm glad we're having it here. It's not being had enough across America.
You know, there's also another issue that people don't believe, which is that the president said in his speech last week that he won't allow this to add a dime to the deficit, right? People say, oh, $1 trillion program, how is that not going to add to the deficit in the out years, and we're going to end up paying for this, our grandchildren are going to end up paying for this. So they're very, very worried about what this is going to cost them, maybe in higher taxes in years to come.
All right, Gloria Borger, senior political analyst, Ali Velshi on the road, and Andrew Rubin, Sirius XM Radio. Thank you so much. All right, 1 year after the largest bankruptcy filing in U.S.